I want to talk about engagement today. Buddhism, enlightenment, awakening, they have a bad reputation or a stereotype about them that when you engage in kind of cross-legged meditation, sitting in perfect union with the absolute, that somehow you are detached or distant from the real life affairs of what it means to be a human being. And there's a reason why this stereotype exists, because it is a very real trap that we can fall into when we have an awakening experience, are in touch with the absolute. We can get stuck there. We can become overly focused on the infinite, on the fact that nothing in this world truly matters. It's all comes and goes, all emotions come and go, all lives and bodies come and go. And so what's the use about worrying about anything, about engaging with life? And this is a deadly trap, because not only are you in that moment disengaged from the reality around you, you're stuck in the absolute, thinking, looking into the core of a black hole. But you can fall into this kind of meaninglessness and nihilism, where you look around and you see, and you correctly see that nothing really matters. But then you wonder why in the world would I get up and go to work? Why in the world would I, go and try and, even eat food, or even, go and hang out with my friends? There's this kind of immobilization that can happen, a lack of motivation that can take hold when you fall into this particular trap of fixating on the absolute. Now, the reason this happens is that people become, they have this moment of awakening, and then they see the cosmic truth of things, but they forget the terrestrial truth of things. In other words, the absolute, the truth on the largest of scales of the cosmic, the cosmic scales of truth are just as real and just as important as what is happening right in front of us. We are no less significant because we're smaller. The motions of a subatomic particle are no less significant than the motions of the largest black hole in the universe. They are entwined. One cannot be without the other also being. If suddenly this was to disappear, this very small level were to stop to matter for whatever reason, then the largest of scales would also stop being able to exist. There's an entwined relationship throughout the whole gamut of existence. And yet, something that can happen is we can get stuck in looking at the largest of scales and seeing through, the way that politics goes up and down, the way that human bodies get hungry and need food, the way that relationships come and go, and we can look at all this and see the impermanence of it, and think that because it's impermanent, that it doesn't really count. I don't really have to worry about it or pay attention to it. A mature integration of the awakened state is to see both ends of this gamut, both ends of this spectrum, and to realize that they are just as important as one another. And so how do we re-engage with the terrestrial, human stuff of life when we've had an awakening experience, especially if we feel like we're stuck in this perspective of the largest, we have a kind of galaxy mind. How do we re-engage with the terrestrial, earthly truth? One of the places where I saw this wisdom really kind of kick into gear, at least for me, it clicked, was when I watched the first episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation with my wife. She loves Star Trek. Absolutely loves it. Haven't really gotten into it throughout my years, but recently we started watching it. And at the end of the first episodes, it stood out to me like a just a star. The very last word that Jean-Luc Picard, the captain, says is engage. And I understood immediately how important that word is, not only to the series itself, but also to what the series is trying to tell us about life. And if you notice, every single episode ends, the very last word is engage. This is such an important concept. Engagement is the difference between being in touch and connected with life and retreating and being disconnected from it. And you may have noticed I moved forward when I said engaged and connected, and backwards when I said disconnected. It's because there is a real physiological difference. When we are engaged, we lean forward. When we stand up, we can feel we're on our toes a little bit. When we're disengaged, we're back and we're on our heels. And when you can stand up right now and try it. When we're standing on our heels, we feel off balance. We don't feel strong and steady and grounded in our legs. We feel like if somebody comes to push us, we might just fall back over. When we are leaning forward just slightly, we feel the weight on our toes. We feel it in the front parts of our feet. Our legs are engaged. Our core is engaged. And we're able to not only physically meet, if somebody comes at us, we can hold our balance. We can hold our center. But we can also, what this does is it sends a message to the mind. It sends a subconscious message to our whole nervous system. Hey, stay present. Stay awake. Be engaged in whatever it is that's in front of you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is what awakening is all about. It is about staying present and engaged in the here and now with whatever is right in front of you. And although it's true that everything is impermanent, that everything comes and goes, that nothing truly matters at the end of eternity, everything within it counts. This is something that is a little paradoxical, but although nothing really matters, everything counts. And when we're engaged in life, when we are leaning in, on our toes a little bit, in the here and now, we can really be present to what the experience of being a human being is like. We can be present to the emotions of whoever's in front of us, and be able to engage with them on a level that actually makes a difference for them. When you come to them and you just say, kind of have your very enlightened kind of look on, and you're holding your hands like that, and you're talking about the perfection of the world and how everything is impermanent, and that all their emotions of sadness and grief and anger and envy don't really matter. They're gonna say, well, fuck you very much. They're gonna say, get out of here. You don't understand me. You're not connecting with my current experience. And they would be right. They would be absolutely right. You can't show up to somebody and, even if you are right, even if you're telling them exactly what the truth of the matter is, if you're not connecting with them and able to express some of that truth in a way that resonates with where they are in that present moment, then nothing is going to get through. Nothing is going to get communicated. It's going to get, worst case, it's going to get thrown back in your face. And so, how do we do what, how do we engage? Well, the very first thing, you can go and watch some Star Trek Next Generation. That would be my first recommendation. It's a great series. But not more seriously, another way, if you're not into Star Trek, if you don't love, great examples of leadership and engagement with hard ethical and human problems, then focus on what I was talking about earlier. Focus on your body. Notice when you're on your heels and when you're on your toes. And this is also, when I'm sitting, it's when am I leaning back? When am I leaning forward? And this slight change in posture also comes, if you notice, there'll be a change in consciousness. There'll be a change in your level of attention and engagement with whatever it is that you are doing. You'll also notice that if you tend to be somebody that is more, nervous or cautious or fearful, you have a hard time really going for things in life and getting stuff done, or maybe you're nervous in social interactions, nervous around conflict. Leaning forward, engaging with whatever is in front of you, it turns that fear into confrontation. Now, a lot of people are nervous around confrontation because we've been exposed to so much bad confrontation. We have a lot of wounding around what it means to be in confrontation, because oftentimes that confrontation leads to conflict, leads to combat, and it is an just uncontrolled expression of anger or hostility that wounds instead of does something constructive. But there is a way to engage with a present moment, with another person, in a way that is, I don't want to say controlled necessarily. There's a control there. It's kind of like, the metaphor I like to use is like wielding a sword. If you know how to wield a sword, then you know how to control it. You know how to control its weight, its dynamics, its how to use it and move it through the air. I personally don't know how to use a sword, but I'm assuming that this is this is what happens when you know how to use a sword. As opposed to when you don't know how to use a sword, like myself, I would be swinging it around left and right. I might hurt somebody that I don't mean to hurt. I might hurt myself. And so same kind of thing goes with our anger, goes with our ability to enter into confrontation with another person on the social level. When we are on our heels, we're telling our whole nervous system, whoa, there's danger here, retreat, be ready to run backwards. When we are slightly on our toes, we're telling our whole nervous system, hey, pay attention, move forward, there's something to do here. And this principle is, if we get used to engaging with people, especially when it's hard, especially when there are difficult feelings involved, then we're able to break through those barriers, those shells of fear that keep us stuck in a particular way of presenting ourselves, a particular way of thinking or emoting, and we're able to actually break through. And what is it that breaks through? It is the real you. It is the real you that breaks through. This is how I truly think. This is how I truly feel. This is what I truly want or need. And when that real you, that reality breaks through, that honesty and sincerity, again, honesty and sincerity, key points to what awakening is all about. It's about being your true self with another person, and I guarantee you, not only are you going to feel better, but they are going to feel better. Seeing that, oh, you're showing up as your real self. And if that, I personally had a really difficult time with this for a long time, and sometimes I still have a difficult time with showing up, especially when my honesty and sincerity might make somebody else feel uncomfortable, might make somebody else feel threatened or uneasy with my disappointment or anger or discontent. Because I had this from my childhood, from my father, who did that all the time, very angry, very just out there, and it hurt a lot of people. But what I ended up losing, and what I think a lot of people end up losing when they choose to step back, they choose to disown the ability to engage in conflict, to be able to use their anger skillfully, is they're essentially shutting themselves off in layers and layers of emotional shelling that not only is there to protect us from other people's emotions, but is also there to protect others from our emotions. At least that's what we think. We think we're doing everyone a service, both ourselves and others, by putting up these barriers, by putting up these shells. But the reality is that what happens when we shell ourselves off Not only do we become dead inside, stiff and lacking in life, disengaged, we also have the risk of building up resentment, building up anger, building up, jealousy or all of these heavy, nasty things, because we're not expressing them. They get stuck in there and they can burst out, they can break out in these explosions of hostility and discontent. And, outbursts of anger, I've heard this saying, outbursts of anger are usually outbursts of honesty that has not been expressed. Now, the onus is on us. The onus is on us to be the ones responsible for expressing our honesty at every given moment so that it doesn't build up and turn into something that has to show up, has to blow up onto another person with all the shrapnel going everywhere. But instead, as soon as something comes up, as soon as some kind of discontent or difficult emotion comes up, express it, say it, confront the person there and then. Hey, actually, that made me feel this sort of way, or actually, I don't like that, or no, I don't want to do that. It's as simple as that, and it's this breath of fresh air. And for some reason, our society, our culture has become so polite to the point of mental and emotional deadening that people are scared of what might happen if they do that. And they've seen plenty of bad examples of it, and so, I don't want to do that. But at the same time, the cultural ideal is you got to be nice and kind and shiny and light. And that's what people think enlightenment is. That's what people think, being awake is you have to be constantly with your little Buddha hands, and your little Christian prayer hands, and you have a silly little smile on your face the whole time. As opposed to being real, as opposed to being like, hey, actually, no, I don't like that. No, I'm not going to stand for that. There was stories of old Zen masters that, from medieval Japan, 1300s, the golden age of Zen, when and some of these stories, some of these koans, these masters are mean. They're brutal. Some of them. There's one story of a. I'll tell it quickly. There's a koan about a man that was studying with a master, and the master, whenever he was asked, what is enlightenment? What is awakening? He would just point up one finger. And so the student, saw this enough times, and he says, I get it. It's like, ask me about enlightenment. And he's like, okay, what's enlightenment? And he puts up one finger. As soon as he does that, the master grabs the finger, takes out a knife, and cuts it off. And he says, now, tell me what enlightenment is. And he puts up that one empty, invisible finger. And he got it. He wakes up. But goddamn, you'd go to jail for that today. But, they were able to use their anger. They were able to use their ability to engage and use basically any means necessary to cut through to someone. And today we don't have that schema. We don't have, culturally we're supposed to be these very nice and kind and caring and tepid individuals, and we think that's what awakening is. We think that's the ideal of spiritual perfection or human perfection. Bullshit. The ideal is exactly what you are now, exactly what you're feeling right now, exactly what is coming up in you right now. That is the ideal. It doesn't matter if you think you should be doing it. It doesn't matter if it feels good or bad. As long as you are sincere, as long as you are honest, and you express that honesty at any given moment, that is what we're looking for. So, to wrap up this video, engage. Watch some Star Trek. Lean forward. Notice how your mind and your emotional system is are you leaning back or are you leaning forward? Are you in a place of fear and about to run away, or are you in a place of engagement, about to confront the here and now of whatever it is that's arising in front of you? It doesn't mean letting your anger out left and right in every which way. It means being present, being totally here with what is needed in the moment. Sometimes it's sadness, sometimes empathy, sometimes it's a boundary setting, sometimes it's a boundary breaking. But being present, being attuned and aware to the here and now, that allows us to truly, actually, fully live our lives. And that's what we're really looking for.